Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host. And today I'm here with Elle O'Flaherty. And she is from DC, and I actually love her history about how she got started in her business and what she's doing, and then how she got into ADHD. And so some of you, when I say that, those 4 letters, you might be thinking negative. Others are like, oh my gosh, I have to listen in closer. But I encourage all of you to listen because I think we're all affected more than you realize. So why don't you introduce yourself, Elle?
Thanks, Charisse. That was such a wonderful introduction. I'm so happy to be here. Your listeners are exactly the kind of people I love to talk to. I started out for nearly 20 years as a practicing attorney. I hadn't been diagnosed as ADHD, and I didn't realize how not well suited I was to being an attorney. And so I just hit this point and made a pivot, started my own business as an entrepreneur, and I was absolutely terrified, which I think a lot of us can identify with. And now I work with all sorts of folks, but my coaching firm, we offer executive ADHD and career coaching. And these days I'm actually doing a lot of speaking and presenting about leadership and other workplace issues, as well as quite a bit of speaking on ADHD. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it.
I think that that is fantastic for many reasons. I think we as entrepreneurs, probably entrepreneurs are most likely more prone to be ADHD than a typical W-2 employee because the W-2 can go to work, they don't get bored. And entrepreneurs, sometimes it's like squirrel, we're looking at different things in shiny object syndrome. So tell me, how did you realize that practicing law, because that takes a lot of time and dedication and effort, and then for you to be practicing it, how did you realize at that point, this doesn't suit me, and you pivoted?
Great question. Yes, I don't want to brag, but if you want to know how to get chicken pieces into India, I am your girl. So I was working in a government position. I was on delegations to the United Nations, on the World Trade Organization, and it on paper sounds really interesting. But once you leave law school and start becoming a lawyer, it's clear that a lot of the work is sitting in your office by yourself, reading dense text, which is not my favorite thing to do. And it is a lot of independent work. And I just found for myself as a very outgoing person who loves teaching people and working with people, it was a challenge, and I was white knuckling my way through it. I was really had to force myself to do the thing every day, which I thought was normal. But as I learned more about ADHD and about myself, I realized that we have interest-based brains. So whereas neurotypical people prioritize things based on importance to them, to their boss, to their partner, and when they check something off their to-do list that's important, they get a little dopamine hit and it's great. But we are really driven by what's interesting to us. And a lot of the work I was doing wasn't interesting, and it didn't light up my values, and it just wasn't well aligned. So I noticed the thing that I did love doing was I had a team who worked under me, and they would come to me for coaching and guidance, and I would get to train and teach them. And that's where those are the days I loved. Mm-hmm. So my pivot kind of came about by wanting to do more of that. And I retrained, probably overtrained, but that's okay, as a coach, and hung out my shingle, which for my entire adult life, I had been a government worker. I thought was so scary and such a risk. But you're absolutely right when you said that ADHD folks we're 300% more likely to be entrepreneurs because we have a higher risk tolerance, and because we do love following our interests. We're really creative and innovative. So yeah, I'm guessing there are more than a few ADHD folks out in your audience.
I want to start at the very, very beginning, because some people might have heard that word ADHD. I remember my kids were diagnosed very, very young. And that was such a stigma, and I wasn't going to label them. And I'm like, I don't believe in that. People are all the same. But my daughter was working with me over the summer while she was home for college. And she's like, okay, Mom, let's go. And so I'd get started and then I'd like go to something else and then I'd go to something else. And she's like, Mom, you are worse than me. She's like, you're so bad with ADHD. I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, yes, we never get the task done because you're over here now. And so I really like that was, I think, the first time I realized, okay, I'm way too spread thin and now I need to start focusing. So the last several months, I've actually been honing in like, does this serve me? Does this serve me? No, it doesn't. And so I've cut so many different things out so I can focus on specific things. So let's talk about what ADHD is and how do you recognize if you have a problem?
Great point. Of course, I'm going to nitpick, and I don't see ADHD at all as a problem or a disability. Right. I actually think that it is a unique brain wiring that has incredible gifts. So some of the ways to recognize that, we used to talk about ADHD and ADD, and now they're under one umbrella of ADHD. And there are three subtypes. The first one is hyperactive impulsive, and that's kind of the stereotypical 7-year-old boy bouncing off the walls. Mm-hmm. And 7-year-old boys who bounce off the walls tend to be the earliest people who are diagnosed because that is what people think of as ADHD, including mental health professionals. The second kind is inattentive, and these are your daydreamers, people who, when you're talking to them, all of a sudden they'll go, "What?" and didn't even hear you. This is much more likely to be women and girls and adults rather than children. Inattentive type tend to be the last people diagnosed for a lot of folks. And I don't know if this rings true for you, but a lot of moms are diagnosed when their children are, for instance, because they start learning about it and think, wait a minute, that's me. And then the third type is combined. Hey, that's me. That's about 60% of us. And we have traits from both kinds. And so even mental health professionals, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of therapists and counseling organizations. I talk to a lot of doctors. And I came to find out that their total training on ADHD is usually about 20 minutes in school. And so they often aren't as knowledgeable about ADHD and certainly don't know about the most recent research, which has been huge in the last 5 or 10 years. And so the name is stupid. I'll say that. We don't lack attention at all. What we have is highly variable attention. So when we're not interested in something, it is absolutely, it's like pulling teeth. We have to white knuckle our way through it and force ourselves to do it. And that's not really a happy place for us to live. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, and something's really interesting that ignites our superpower, which one of them is hyperfocus. And we can be so productive. We will work on something for hours. We don't notice the time passing. We, get really into it. And we can be some of the most productive people that you've ever seen. We can essentially do much more work in a shorter time period than neurotypical people. Mm-hmm. And so one of the important things is aligning, especially our work with our interest. And that's where we really start to shine. So I love hearing you say that you were pruning some of the to-dos and some of the commitments to fit what's important and what you're really interested in. That's a surefire way to get success.
And I think it's interesting because the more and more I watch some of these really brilliant people, like, I will name drop Grant Cardone. I was at his event last week, and it's this very, very elite group of people. We're all investors. So we're in this room with him, very small. If people don't know who Grant Cardone is, then go Google him. His mission is to teach the world wealth, especially the United States. And so anyway, he just, for the first, I'd say 45 minutes, he gets up on the stage and he just starts talking and he's spewing all these numbers about the economy, about this. And I just sat there thinking, holy cow. This guy must have had ADHD as a kid. He must have been, because he talks about how much he was in trouble all the time. And he was so bored. School was not for him. But now you get him in this realm where economics was his undergrad. And that man is brilliant about different things when it comes to real estate and housing and the market, about real estate stuff, because that's what he's passionate about. And because of that, he's built $1 billion multiple companies, and he surrounds himself with the right people. And so it's just interesting as I start to watch more of these people that they were probably in school, they were the troubled child, they're never going to amount to anything, they're just blah, blah, blah. And if we could hone in on those types of people, especially kids right now, then we would have such a more, in my opinion, productive society, and way more, I don't know, just more successful, more happy. And I think that so many times we have to put these people into a certain mold that is not correct.
Yep.
And so I love that you're talking about this and that you're bringing awareness to it. And I love that you're helping executives. So how do you help them be more productive?
Great question. Also, great observation. And you're exactly right. Some of the biggest names when we think of founders who have started these companies, incredible things, do tend to be ADHD. For instance, we think that Nikola Tesla, we think that Albert Einstein, other people like that were ADHD. And so it is really about harnessing these great traits, one of which being another gift of ours. And I promise I'm going to get to your question, but is that we don't just think outside the box. We don't really realize there is a box.
That's true.
And because you're laughing, I can see that might resonate. And because our brains filter less information, so we're actually getting more information than neurotypical people. Mm-hmm. We are also able to make really creative connections and come up with things that neurotypical people probably just couldn't. And so when I'm working with executives and professionals and entrepreneurs, it's really about leaning into those incredible strengths. Mm-hmm. Like, we are the people who are going to come up with a great next thing that's going to drive all the revenue for our company or whatever it is that we're doing. We're probably not the people who are going to get down into some of those details. But if we're put ourselves in a spot where we can lean on our strengths and shine in those ways and eliminate as much as possible the areas that aren't interesting to us, it's amazing. The other part of that is, and this is quite a bit of ADHD coaching, is being curious, approaching our lives and our productivity as sort of a science experiment, and trying out different tools that work in the way our brain works. Mm-hmm. So I never try to change an ADHD person into a neurotypical person. That is not possible, and it's not fun. And so using tools that were built for ADHD people in the way that our brains work, it is incredible. It just completely changes productivity. And the other thing, and I know it's a long answer, I'm sorry, but so my whole reason for being, my mission is to reduce the stigma in ADHD, including among people in our community. And so when I start working with people and I tell them what's normal for us, and that the things that we've been judged on by neurotypical people are really completely normal for us, I find that just brings down so much of the shame and the guilt. And by eliminating that and just leaning into those tools and ways of doing things, it is incredible how much that builds people's professional confidence and just self-confidence in general, and starts really quieting that negative self-talk and that sort of that side of things, which I think is really powerful. I'm curious, have you noticed any of that as an ADHD person?
So I actually haven't been diagnosed, but my kids have been. And so the more, like, I refuse to accept it. I refuse to, there's a few things like diagnoses that I have had, and I'm like, oh, I don't believe it. And now the more and more I start to realize, you know what, it's not a bad thing. And it's okay that I'm a little different. And so I look at my kids, my son specifically, that you talk about how you could hyper focus for hours on something you enjoy, but there's something else he can't. Like, doing the dishes is beyond his comprehension. It just is. So much so that he'd rather use paper plates than to have to wash a dish. It's just like so not okay to him. But he can go and spend 2 hours trying to pick a lock because he locked his keys in his car and be successful. Figure out how to do it. And I'm like, how do you do that? How do you spend 2 hours on this task, but you don't even try or can't, like, it just, you can't do it. It's a block. And so he started sending me these memes about ADHD to show, like, here's how I think and here's what I do. And
yeah,
it's for me, it's starting to open my eyes that, okay, I mean, it's genetic, right? Hereditary. Have you found, or no?
Yes. We believe it is.
Yeah. So because of that, I think that there's so much more that we're starting to learn. So.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I love that example. By the way, I'm also a little obsessed with lock picking. It's uh much to my husband's chagrin. Um, Whatever the thing is that interests us, like, man, we are amazing in that area. And I think of it as an advantage. It's pretty
Right.
cool that when, as an ADHD person, we're thinking about, for instance, what we want to do professionally and we're building our career path, we have this natural, like, big flag sticking out. The things that we get interested in that cause hyper focus tend to be the things we should head towards in our
Mhm.
career. And so I'm not saying that anyone has to be a lock picker, but that also tends to be someone, for instance, who likes to solve problems, investigate, and think about solutions. And so maybe that's an area that he might be interested in. So it's pretty cool. I often have clients track what makes them fall into hyperfocus, and then we kind of pick apart, like, what was it about that you loved? And by going towards those things, then we will find careers that are just incredibly well suited to us and that we really enjoy.
That is amazing. I didn't even think about that because I've always told him he should be an exterminator because he can spend 3 hours out in the yard catching a vole to do 18 questions on a math assignment when he can do the problem in his head, but you're going to make him show his work. He can't. It's just, it's 18 hours and I'm not joking.
Oh,
So,
yeah. And that's most ADHD people. We have an action tuned brain,
mhm.
that we like to do and go do the thing. And so solving the math problem, cool, like that's a thing we can do. But writing all the steps down, ugh, I too would hate that. And so oftentimes I'll encourage people to go towards things that are that you're that are active, that you're doing, and that you get to see the outcome and effect of your work. And so, yeah, maybe he doesn't want to be an exterminator, but maybe he does, who knows? But it sounds like what he really loves is like that challenge, and
Yeah.
he's ignited by the challenge of trying to catch the bowl or do the thing. That's really cool. He sounds interesting. I totally want to meet your son.
Yeah, he is a very interesting guy. Okay, so what are some things that people can do? One thing I think is writing down what they interest, like what they hyper focus on, but what is another thing they can do to succeed in their career?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Well, for one thing, noticing your strengths,
Mhm.
which sometimes we get mired down as ADHD people because we get so many messages about what we aren't doing well.
Mm.
So I like to guide people through questions like, what do you learn really quickly? What do people come to you for advice on? Things like that to uncover our strengths. And more importantly, are we also interested in these things and go towards those? Um, the other thing, and I thank God for technology, I love it, but
Mhm.
doing two things. One, letting our future computer overlords do the boring things. So if there is a way to automate it, if there's a way to make a template or anything like that, I'm a big fan of using those. I think ChatGPT personally is one of the best tools that has ever come around for ADHD people because we
Mhm.
can just type our thoughts in there and then it'll give us sort of an outline or a first try at something, which then makes it so much easier for us to keep going and do the thing. So looking for ways that you can eliminate or automate things that are annoying, I think is really great. And then on the positive side, not expecting yourself to work as an ADHD, I'm sorry, as a neurotypical person. So for
Mhm.
instance, if you're an entrepreneur and you're ADHD, most likely your amazing gift is innovation and doing things in a different way, which, as we all know, having your own niche or having a way that you stand out as an entrepreneur is so important. And so not trying to make yourself neurotypical and displaying all those wonderful traits. Just for instance, with my own coaching firm, when I started it, I'm a little bit hyper and I like to think I'm really funny and I leaned into that. And so I coach using a lot of humor and I do a lot of training using a lot of humor and I like researching. And so finding the things that you really enjoy and combining those
Mhm.
really can ignite your superpower.
I like that. And more of a visionary, so you get an executor to do your work, right? Kind of automate it or hire a VA or hire an assistant for part-time that can go do the tasks that you don't want to do.
Oh yes. With the one caveat that about 30% of us are ADHD and on the autism spectrum, ADHDers, who tend to be some of my favorite people. They're balls of fire. Sometimes they can do both. And I think they're kind of amazing. And some other ADHD people too. But just really noticing any areas of challenge. And those are the things like, you don't want to make your day full of challenges. Let's reduce those.
I love that. Okay, so here's my question, totally off the cuff, is say that you are sitting on a park bench and you're just enjoying the scenery and your 19-year-old self comes and sits next to you. What advice would you give her?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. I would give kind of similar advice to what I have been saying. I would say your magic is in how different you are to many people. And that is what's going to attract people to you and help you make the biggest impact. So don't try to become what everyone else is. You don't become a horse when you're a zebra. Instead, think about how you can lean into those differences and the strengths that you're good at that most people aren't. And it's really going to bring you a lot of joy. I think you were talking earlier about the education system. And I think that because everyone is encouraged to do things the same way and to sit still and to do the thing, I think it ingrains in us that there is a single right way to do things when there isn't. There's a million right way to do things. And it's so much better to do the right thing in the right way for you.
Yeah. And I agree. And quick little thing with the education. If you're a mom, you've got to figure out how to be able to make it work for your kids. Like my son, he's genius. He can do all of the problems literally in his head and he'll get 100% on the test. So for him to do stupid busy work is stupid, as you use the word. I love it. So I worked with his teachers and said, look, can he do every other problem? Because I don't think you understand. It's literally 18 hours to be able to get him to do one worksheet. This is torture. But he's 100% on all the tests. So as soon as his grades start to dip, then great, we'll talk about that. But can he just do every other problem? They said yes. But then I have a daughter who also has ADHD, and she needs to be able to do all the problems and maybe 3 more problems per, because she can't grasp it in her head the way that he can. And so I think that there is a difference for every single child, and fight for your kids. The American system was built for the Industrial Revolution, not where we are today. And you don't sit down in a seat and stare straight ahead and expect to have information input into our brains. Most people don't work like that anymore, yet our system is still like that. So without going on a tyrant, I appreciate the awareness that you are bringing to so many people. So thank you.
Good mom. Good mom. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being such a good ally. Even when earlier when you weren't necessarily as informed about ADHD or maybe quite there yet. That's amazing. I appreciate all the allies out there so much who are willing to let people just be unique and different. So yay, good mom.
Thank you. Thank you. So how do people find you, specifically our listeners, if they want to get a hold of you or learn more?
Absolutely. Well, I am extremely creative with all of my social media. So my handle on Instagram and everywhere else is at Elle O'Flaherty, no apostrophe. Also, check out my website. It's www.interlacesolutions.com. I speak a lot for organizations. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. We also offer individual coaching, and we have some asynchronous learning courses that are pretty cool. Also, this is my life's work and passion. So if I can help in any way or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And I love to connect on social. So I'm around.
Well, thank you so much. This is a topic that we could probably spend hours on, but I know that your time is short, as is mine. So I really hope that our listeners realize that it's okay to be different and actually embrace the difference, because that's what brings oftentimes a lot more creativity and awareness about different topics. And so be you and have a great day.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being here. I appreciate it.
Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.